Morning, everyone. I'm Daniel, and today I'd like to share a message about a book named Your Mind Matters. So this has been a book that me and teacher Noah has been sharing in the morning assembly for the past month, and today I'd like to share about our last chapter, acting on knowledge. So before we dive into what we are going to talk about today, I brought one phrase which says that God never intends knowledge to be an end in itself, but always to be a means to some other end. What does it mean by that? Well, this book was talking about the importance of the intellectualism as a Christian. But anti-intellectualism was the thing that we were trying to avoid. But that doesn't mean that we have to be hyper-intellectualists. We have to be in the middle, knowing what is right and pursuing what is right. I'll explain about this more detailedly. In the beginning of this chapter, there was one saying where it had this expression, which is being puffed up. Those people who might have a lot of knowledge, whether it might be in the field of their studying area or experience in working, stuff like that. But right now, I want to explain about this word, being puffed up. What does it mean by that? Well, Google says, to pleased or satisfied about something that you achieved. However, the true knowledge as a Christian, which is the truth, doesn't lead to this. And this time, as I've shared in the first page with this phrase, I'll explain about what is those ends that this phrase is saying, but always to be a means to some other end. So, this is the first thing. True knowledge should lead to worship. As I've said, true knowledge doesn't let us to be puffed up. But true knowledge let us acknowledge who we are. Not only that, but who God is, which leads us to worship God. To know God is to love God. And then the next thing that knowledge leads to is faith. Well, this is pretty obvious because knowledge is the profound base of faith. Knowledge is what faith makes reasonable. And I'd like to share about the third one, which is very important, to be a salt and light in the world. Knowledge should lead to holiness. Now, well, I think this relates to most of us here. We've been trained in international mission, IM, in this organization for a few years. We know who God is, and we've been taught how to live. What does this mean? This means that we have responsibility. Responsibility to be holy. Because we know who He is, and we know what to show to the world. That's what true knowledge leads to. And I'd like to share about the last point, and I'll wrap up this message. Knowledge should lead to love. Do you all know the story in the Bible where Paul refused to eat the sacrificed meat? Was that because eating that meat has some problem theologically? No. He knew that eating that meat had no problem, had no theological problems. But why he didn't eat? He didn't eat because of love. Because he knew that there were some brothers and sisters who have less knowledge than him. having little conscience. Concerning them, he decided not to eat that meat. And Paul also said this, that without knowledge, without love, all that he had, all that we do, all the virtues that we have means nothing. So these were the 4 points that I brought up this morning. Worship, faith, holiness, and love. This is what true knowledge, knowing about the Bible, knowing about God, leads to. And I hope every one of us can apply this to our own lives. I brought another phrase from Charles Simon. He was a preacher, and I'd like to read this all together with y'all. So at the count of 3, let's read this together. 1, 2, 3. For the attainment of divine knowledge, we are directed to combine a dependence on God's Spirit with our own researches. Let us then not presume to separate what God has thus united. So let me explain about this phrase. This is saying, simply, you guys have to pray, but not just praying to our holy God, but also to study about the Word, study about the Bible. We need a hunger for the divine truth. And that's what the Proverbs say. My child, listen to what I say. Who is our God that will reject us when we are having that hunger for divine truth? If we are having that genuine hunger to know about the truth, about the true knowledge that leads to worship, that leads to faith, that leads to holiness, that leads to love, who is a God that will reject that? No, He will accept that, and He will pour out that knowledge to us if we have that genuine hunger for the divine truth. I didn't bring this morning a special application for you all, but I believe that this message will have been pretty clear to you. It's what we've heard as we've been training here for months or for years. So I hope you can remind this message throughout the day, those 4 words, to seek the knowledge and apply that to your life. And yeah, that was all for my message. Thank you.